We have signal. Signal confirmed. Verifying. Decrypting. It's the History Homos podcast. Scott, William, and Patrick cutting through all the slop and trash. Informational snow crash. Go back. Go back. MK Ultra, go insane.
And we're live. Welcome to the show. Joining me this week, as always, is Patrick. And
Hello.
also joining me this week is, for the first time, welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey everybody,
How you doing, Mike?
I'm having a hell of a day actually. I'm covered
As
in
if you should even ascribe a value to how you're feeling.
yeah. Well, I am
Right,
covered
yeah.
in sawdust. That's provable, but the rest of it, yeah, it's just a
Right,
guess.
sure. So, joining us this tonight, Mike, who I gave me the idea, who asked to be on the show, and also gave me the idea that we were going to discuss something I've been meaning to do for a long time, which is tackle the and I sort of want to jump right into what we were just talking about right before the show. Is like there's like this huge shadow cast by this figure in the Western canon, I guess, by Friedrich Nietzsche, of course. And you guys were just mentioning something that is peculiar to me. That in most TV shows or movies or whatever, this is the philosopher that always gets the name drop.
Yeah.
And I guess if I was going to take a normie approach to why that might be, is probably he like seems like the most intellectual one is what I would guess. Or like it just seems like a deep cut or something. There's something about the name, maybe the Z, and there's something about it that it makes people feel like this is a deep cut that I'm pulling. Some screenwriter or something, or staff writer for a TV show.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah. It certainly seems like an invocation a lot of the time. Like if it's
Sure.
not people using his aphorisms and his his turns of phrase or whatever, because he is magnificent writer. The guy can
True.
spin a sentence, but more often than not, he's a punchline, or it's one of three things. He's a punchline, he's being quoted without context, and without you know, being you know, having it ascribed to him, or people are his ideas, they're kind of used as
Well,
talk.
yeah.
They're kind of used as like, yeah, they're
He is
not
like really like the philosopher for like the people who create culture in the 20 and 21st century. I
sure.
think that would be safe to say. Would you say that's safe to say? Because I mean, we were just talking about a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about 2001. Obviously, that one is like one of the most on the nose Nietzsche references of all time. But it's more than that because I mean, like we were a little while back. We were Patrick, you and I were discussing the book series, the Hyperion, and there's like this character, this faction of characters in it called the Ousters, who are like these humans that have like left living on Earth and they've like decided to forge a new path into like developing new types of gene splicing and all this fucking crazy shit, and they've sort of moved into the space between the stars and become this new man or whatever. And I was like, yeah, it's like obviously the writer was like you're trying to evoke like a Nietzschean future kind of thing, and it's a very very well trod sort of archetype that particularly I think science it's very useful in science fiction for that same reason. It's like has this sort of transhumanish implication or whatever, but it's not just in science fiction. It's I mean we dare I say we'll be there Nietzsche's shadow is being shown in a cave for all eternity in the society that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, super influential guy, which I think is what he was trying to do. If he was trying to do anything on purpose, because he says a lot. I mean, he's the poet in his own mind, and what that meant to him was your words reaching as far into the future as they could, and he definitely has done that. He's got a lot of momentum behind him, but yeah, I don't know if he made many concrete claims or like solid ideas that people are using, but if you just want to pluck something off a shelf and put it in your show, he's the perfect guy, right? Like
Yeah.
bathroom reader, philosopher.
Well,
Sorry.
you hit on something there that I want to touch on pretty significantly here is that yeah, it's not as if and by the way, a lot of the his most ardent devotees will make sure that you understand that nothing he wrote was prescriptive.
Mhm.
But I mean, tell that to the people who run our society. Of course, they clearly have implemented many of his ideas, obviously, into the fabric of our reality. Of course, but I do think you're right, though, is that to be influential, you can't be prescriptive because it will necessarily become dated, right?
Yeah, you'll just actually it's in the early parts of this book when he's talking about. I'd have to look it up, but all of the antitheticals he uses where you try to be I'll get them. I read too many translations of the beginning, so maybe I'll look it up while we're talking.
Oh,
But
sure.
what I was just gonna say, I think I can hit on what you're saying here is that one of the things he sort of talks about is the idea that for any philosophy, classical or contemporary to him, they all claim to have like a new unique take on the way to view the world or whatever, but he would make the case that they're all sort of reaffirming the same structures of human behavior as it is naturally. Am I barking up the right tree here with this? Is that he thinks that
Yeah, I
basically
think
all
that's what he poetically calls science, and right.
yeah.
Um, and then you
So
could look.
basically, what I'm saying though is he would say, and I'm not sure I agree with him on this necessarily, but he would say that all previous worldviews to his specifically have been all pale imitations of one another, essentially, which are all then themselves a reflection of what is basic human evolutionary psychology.
Yeah, that tracks. And then what he's putting forward is, I
A
think,
new
intentionally
way.
less concrete, so that maybe it lasts longer, right? It
I
doesn't
think
make
you're onto something with that.
as many positive claims, so that people won't be putting it down, because it's the hammer that will always, the tool that will always hammer the nail, right? Even if
Yeah.
it's, yeah. Yeah, that's a different book, but that is one of his philosophizing with a hammer. That's
Mhm.
in Beyond Good and
Oh,
Evil.
right. Yes, that's true. So yeah,
And,
this
he's
book.
perfect just for that. I can like just pluck something Nietzsche said, great turn of phrase that survived translation like 3 different ways, and say
Yeah.
philosophizing with a hammer, and it means something poetically. It means nothing like concretely, but it's so useful.
But that's the thing. He does like to have a turn of phrase, essentially. Well, okay, so we specifically decided to hone in on the gay science, partially because of the name. First of all, let's get that out of the way.
It's on brand.
It's on brand. It's on brand. Yeah. Also, I think it's good that I didn't know this when I walked into it, of course. I did, but I do, as I understand, this is like the beginning of the formation of all of his major themes that you'll find across his work. Um, and it's the introduction of many of his major themes that you'll find throughout the rest of his work. And ergo, I think it's a decent introduction to a lot of these concepts, such as eternal recursion, um this idea that life is cyclical and that all of existence can and will recur eventually again and again, and also you'll find again reflections of this in our own lives, which is like this idea that you'll notice and you'll live through cycles of repetition throughout your life, and that's sort of like one of the great comforts and pains of human existence, I guess.
He the way he puts the idea, of the eternal return forward, it's posed as sort of like a rhetorical, if a
Thought
demon,
experiment kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, how would you feel and how would you behave if you were told that how you've lived and how you choose to live will be repeated through time forever and ever, and as if, how would that be a curse, or would that, the with whoever
Or would
brought
you
you
be
that.
happy?
Yeah, so and that feeds into just how much stock he puts into uh and it's funny because I think more so when you say, Scott, that he believes time does repeat itself, in the sense that history is largely cyclical. There's one of the great books that I point to for stuff like this is, and it's a little heavy-handed, but it's still a great compilation and spread of rhymes and patterns throughout history. It's the Fourth Turning by Strauss and Neil Howe, William Strauss, I think. This is really good shit in there about how um, we do pass through these. It's a meme now, though. Weak time, strong thing, on and on. But um, Nietzsche was on to that, well before any of us had a clue, and
Hmm.
he
And even
he
before, he also predates what's his name with the Jung. He even predates Jung
yeah.
with the Jungian archetypes and stuff too. So
And he understood that the way we choose to live throughout history will, in one way or another, push the ball forward in whatever direction it goes. And all he was interested in it, as far as I can tell, Mike, correct me if I'm not getting the whole picture, but all he was interested in was it moving forward nonetheless, despite what uh direction it goes in. Is
Yeah,
that
I don't know everything about his intentions, and I don't think he
I
expresses
don't think he
them
did.
too forward so that he's more useful or more popular, one of the two. But like the starting gun is he wants the people who find their life excruciating because they can't help but pay close attention to their effect on other people, their effect on the world, the way things got to where they find themselves, and they're in that wavering between pure joy, bliss, and excruciating pain. I guess it's like coming on in the middle of the book. And I think about that, like this guy who's becoming a syphilitic cripple in a chair, and people will take his work in 1,000 different directions. Fuck his intentions. And
Right.
here he is
There's,
saying, I just want to know there's people out there who give a shit what
I want to have made a difference in
yeah.
history, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm. Even if it's just
Um,
poetic, right? Or
yeah.
like
Well, I mean, that's a good insight, because I mean that is really like fundamentally the characteristic um that he sort of underlines as being important at all times, like this impactfulness is like the most important characteristic you could possess.
Mhm.
um and another thing that I wanted to say is this oh yeah, fuck, it slipped away from me because I was starting to think about what you were just saying. But yeah, I think there's definitely, oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, so the other thing is that with the beginning of this book, and particularly this is like released several times, by the way. He released it
Mhm.
once when he initially came out with the book, and then he also re-released it with prefaces
Mhm.
that sort of like gave more context as to what he was going through at the time. And in this addendum, he's referring to the fact that when he wrote it, he was coming away from illness. And it's funny because he does end up, as Mike just mentioned, dying like in a very weird, like syphilitic cripple situation, as you said. But the sickness that he's talking about in the book is not is I mean, there was definitely some physical aspect to it, but I think it's mostly metaphorical, and he's talking about leaving the sort of tutelage of like the romantic like ideology, as it were, like the Wagnerian ideology, and also like from the sort of from the general oeuvre of like people like Schopenhauer, and moving on to like a more positivist
Mhm.
um disposition, as it were, as opposed to like, yeah, like I said, Schopenhauer.
If I may, Scott Thew, like you said, he was regarding his time, in Romanticism, that being the prevailing perspective, culturally,
Hmm.
as well as what what he'll I'll let him put it himself. It's let me where to begin. This stretch of desert, exhaustion, disbelief, icing up in the midst of youth, this interlude of old age at the wrong time, this tyranny of pain, even excelled by the tyranny of pride that refused the conclusions of pain, and conclusions are consolations. That's one. This radical retreat into solitude as a self-defense against a contempt for men that had become pathologically clairvoyant. This determined self-limitation to what was bitter, harsh, and hurtful to know, prescribed by the nausea that had gradually developed out of an incautious and pampering spiritual diet called Romanticism. Which I talk about, you asked me, find 5 things you agree with. That's one. I
Yeah, yeah.
certainly, yes, absolutely. And that's the thing that kills me is I find this man
But
so
this begs a question, and
sympathetic.
this, Mike, this is on brand for you, of course. But Nietzsche, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I love it.
I love everything he says is completely incomprehensible unless you like sit down and digest every sentence with absolute intent.
Yeah, and
I
media.
know what you're talking about too, by the way, when he's when as but when I was listening to I've grappled with that same sentence, Patrick, myself, and I was like, damn, that shit fire. But when you read it back to me, I was literally looking at it. I looked at you with my own eyes, like, what the fuck are you talking about? It makes
Yeah,
no fucking sense at
you'd
all.
have to
Sorry about
staple
that.
it to the wall first to look at it, right? Because it's like viscera and
Yeah.
it's obviously his experience. He's like, I don't. So have you done Nietzsche on the show before? Like the
This is my
introduction?
first time actually grappling with the actual text of it. I've definitely like read again like all the college level. This is what
Yeah,
Nietzsche thinks stuff. Of course, plenty of that. But this is the first time I've engaged with the actual primary source of Nietzsche.
I just to for by way of introduction, he's a philologist, right? So romanticism is his bread and butter. It's the way the ivory tower formed him. He's
Yeah.
read all the Greeks. He's read them in Greek. He's read all of the Bible front to back to front, three different languages in
Right.
theory,
In
but he doesn't
original
spend
Greek. Yeah.
too much time like lording it over you. He just has these, yeah, sweeping sort of emotional outbursts about which is very relatable. I didn't when the dust settled, I didn't love university, but I sure spent a lot of time like being really excited there. And now, I get covered in sawdust
Yeah,
instead.
see, I never went to college myself. But yeah, I will say this is that I don't hate reading the stuff that they have you read in college
Yeah,
without the like structure and gay like teacher annoying libtard, professor and shit like that.
because they'll throw in Nietzsche, just not a whole book, because that'll um
Melt your brain. Yeah.
yeah, that it'll make you depressed at least a few times, but a few quotes is just perfect. It's a pick me up. We all get behind it, right? We can talk about, you have a great class talking about that one section Patrick just read, and that's right. What could he have meant? Because that's the poetry of it, um, which is
Well,
which
yeah,
is a
that
great use for
poetry
poetry.
is the key phrase in this work, of course. The gay science. Now, the book, as it was originally published in its original German, is Die Fröhliche Wissenschaft, which I guess would probably it would directly translate to English as joyful or frolicking wisdom. Um, but he also simultaneously published it, and as a quotation within the book, he says in Italian, which I believe he was living in Italy when he wrote it. Um, he entitled it La Gay Scienza, so that's why we call it the gay science, of course. But the term is actually a pretty old term. It's a medieval term, which is the what it's like what was espoused by the troubadour poets of southern France who they're they're somewhat associated with the Cathars, who are a
Mhm.
Gnostic Christian sect, but there's not actual like genuine origin of it, but there is like association between them, if you get what I'm saying. Like there's connection to it, but it's not like explicitly a Cathar thing. But regardless of that fact, it was a pretty distinct style, I would argue popular style for the Middle Ages, of poetry that actually sort of influenced all other European sort of poetry of its contemporary time.
Would you
Interestingly, even
say,
though, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
I just have to interject with something stupid. Would you say that this is for anyone who knows Bob Dylan, would this be his hurricane era when he started wearing like funny hats and like hanging out with
Where he
gypsies and
where
shit?
he went electric, you're saying?
No, no, this is 10 years after that where he's like, it's what is it, like the Mozambique era, for those who know. Mike, you
I
into
don't.
Bob
I'm
Dylan?
not. I really don't like Bob Dylan. Truthfully, I'm
I'm
not.
not
Really?
into him
I'm not
enough to
into.
know
Damn.
his different eras. I like the early stuff. Sorry,
And when
someone just
this
knocked
era,
on my door while you were talking, so I got a little distracted. But I think it's just
the ghost
house
of Fred
painters,
Nietzsche.
fucking house painters.
Um,
Yeah, it's
uh,
Fred Nietzsche being like, "You misinterpreted my work.
No, like I don't think he'd care at all.
Misinterpreted my work.
He's would he be
He does,
a
you're right though. He
generator
doesn't really give a
of
fuck.
like
As long as we're talking about him, he's happy. He's the Kanye West of the fucking philosophers.
I've
Yeah.
never seen a man more aptly, suited to stand with his hands behind his back, if that makes any sense. Just
Or like he has no use of his hands because his brain is melted and he's sitting. But yeah, same idea.
he keeps his hands
He
behind
does
his
admit
back.
that he can't not be a pussy hound in the book, for the record.
Yeah. That one time with the staircase and whatever. Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, he was talking about the
The
two
snake.
things that jumped out at me was he was talking about even the most beautiful of vistas, after following 2 weeks of living there, you pine for distant shores. And also another line where he talks about when you love a woman, you're jealous. And I'm like, I'm not. What kind of women are you dating, Fred? Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, probably some really rough broads, man. The kind that would,
The kind that listen to him fucking babble.
yeah, and by the way, back to a Ted K allusion, parallel, overlap.
You think you read him? Patrick, you think Ted K read Nietzsche?
I think Nietzsche read Ted K.
He might have, yeah.
No, but speaking of like being a too good to be a teacher, also probably just
Yeah.
two guys who laid it all out on paper.
We're two guys.
We're three guys.
You guys from Sweden? Is that yeah.
That's what I was referencing. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just
The
kidding.
deep cut. Sorry,
We're
Patrick.
some wild and crazy guys. So I forgot where we were.
You were talking about how they're too good to be teachers.
Yeah, and just
They are.
both guys who just laid it all out on the line for somebody at some point. Ted K, some Henry Murray, the spook, psychologist at Harvard, and Nietzsche probably laid it out on the line with, told everything he really believed to some prostitute.
Probably, yeah.
And she just turned to him after he laid it all out for an hour and a half straight and said, "What? Did you say something?"
Yeah.
And just
Fred, what
spun
the
him
fuck
out.
are you talking about?
That's right before he, opens a vein and cuts thus spake Zarathustra, right?
Yeah.
Self-insert, I'm the madman that no one wants to listen to. But I swear I had a point this whole time. Yeah.
And he
definitely
does
did.
have points. If you put the whole thing together back to front, he's got many points. But
yeah, so let's cover the main themes that he covers in this. So we talked about eternal recursion, eternal return. And yeah, that's a biggie, obviously. Another one is this is the first appearance of God is dead. Of course, probably one of his most famous quotes. And I mean, the way he lays it out, I mean, this is the thing. When you look into what he means by it, it's like almost like, I mean, isn't this the thing that that like teenagers go like, oh yeah, man, this is why you should be nihilist or whatever. Um, but the fact of the matter is, so God is dead is the quote, when we have killed him. It's described in this little scenario in which it's a madman running down the street being like, I see God, I see God. And all the smug libtards on the street are going, what is he disappeared? Has he run away like a child? I assume that they're French. I'm imagining they're French.
Because he's got a lot to say about Voltaire in this too.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, he says that, and but here's the thing. I do think that it's worth saying here that I believe, I might be nuts for this one, but I feel like he had like a sort of German audience in mind for this, at least this book, if not maybe his entire canon. I don't know. But when he says we have killed him, he's talking about the Germans. And the
Or
Germans through the
Europeans.
Reformation did kill God, kind of.
Sure.
Yeah,
Actually,
if you
yeah.
want to dig on Lutherans for a bit, I'm here for it. But yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I'm not even digging on Lutherans so much, but it's
his
like,
dad was a Lutheran pastor.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know. But that's what I'm saying. So he's noticing something that was definitely going on, particularly in Germany at the time. But I mean, now it's all of society, Western society, Western European society, that has sort of, it has all the piety, all the things he doesn't like about religion, but it's even bereft of God itself, the actual point of it, the point of faith, the point of belief. The only part he likes about religion is the believing in something earnestly. And nowadays it has all of the things he doesn't like about religion, but it's boiled down into this mystery goo of the Holocaust and Greg Floyd and and trannies.
Yeah,
That was
the,
all happening at the time.
No, I'm
It's
saying
fun.
now that's what I
the
mean.
Oh,
trannies
sure.
were.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Eh, and then people will tack on the whole Third Reich from and say it came from Nietzsche. I
Isn't it his
see it.
sister that did that?
His sister married an officer who was part of the Third Reich, and then some of
Well, she was like putting out his books after he was
Yeah.
dead.
yeah, like parts of them ended up in like the little red book of philosophy for German soldiers. Apparently, I never traced it down too much, but
I mean, here's the reality. He's like the modern era's philosopher. Like, he's not postmodern. He's modern.
mhm.
And I would think there's you could find Nietzsche in the philosophy of the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany and of the Atlanticist like UK/America regime. You could see aspects of it in all three,
Absolutely.
or whatever.
And the
Go ahead.
process that makes romanticism into modernism, when you do
Yes.
it again to modernism, is what makes postmodernism, and then you never stop, right? You just start folding it on itself.
Right.
Eternal recurrence. It wasn't the. It's not what it means, but I've heard enough people say it. It wasn't that, like, it was never given as a process. This is what you do, and this is how you do it, and why,
Right.
and it will yield this. But he, like the few things he says about communism being a process, I didn't bring it up or make notes about it, but it's, the communists will always do communist things and make a terrible place, is like the really short expression of
Yeah.
what he says. And then it's kind of
Well, I
like
think
modernism.
he takes issue with the any sort of ideology that has a equality of man basis, be it Christianity or like just what his contemporary liberal
Mhm.
like contemporaries were like, which I guess now would be considered libertarians, I suppose. He was not that either. Um because and also it's really funny because you can see a lot of him in Ayn Rand actually. However, she
Oh,
hated him.
absolutely.
She
Absolutely.
hated
Yeah.
him though, and always denied the idea that they had things in common. But it's unmistakable. It's so I mean, honestly, if I had to pick someone that was most directly influenced by the like philosophy of Nietzsche, it would be Ayn Rand.
Yeah, I think objectivism, still one of the funniest things I've ever said on this show. It's called objectivism. Why, Scott?
Because Ayn Rand's objectively ugly.
There it is. Still good. But yeah, if you look at those two, if
Was
you
that
look
right?
at,
Was that what I originally
yeah,
said?
exactly.
Okay,
Yes, that's
good.
perfect.
I
That's
actually
good
just
shit.
came off.
That's canon, baby. See that right there. You're frolicking, Scott. You're currently engaging in. Yeah, can
We're
we
doing
try?
it.
We're doing
We're fucking doing it.
it. No, but yeah, can we talk about what it is? What
Yeah,
it is
lay
to
it all
do?
out, brother.
I don't have a who. I don't
Take a
have.
crack at it.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, shit,
It
man.
is what we do every week for the record, like of
What?
the
Just
show.
the devil may care.
We discuss ideas and do it joyfully.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's not what he's talking about. Which,
Oh wow, History Homos really is a fitting title, isn't it? Huh? The
Yeah.
gay science. We're engaging in the gay science.
this
Yeah.
is
I was reading a couple of the translator notes. I didn't fully rekindle my uh the person I was in university and reading translator notes and introductions and all that, but I did a little. And that someone was trying to seek, the first use of gay goes back to Australia apparently in 1850s, and it didn't seem right, but like there it
That
meant
doesn't sound right. Yeah.
it was like associated with rent boys and prostitutes, and in that way it kind of makes sense. Like this is the for rent philosophy. You just apply it, uh, and it makes things more philosophical, right? It's like musing about something, and he laments not having someone to listen to him, but he was doing a lot, processing. That's how the book is organized, right? Here's my thought
Right.
about this little thing and this little thing,
Yeah.
and Voltaire and ennui and
Yeah, one of the things
elevated
he
mood.
talks about is this idea of a connection between biology or physiology and philosophy. And I think
Oh
I will
yeah,
say
yeah.
this is that I feel like
This is important.
neuroscience, modern neuroscience has kind of vindicated a lot of what he had to say here. This idea that like we don't really understand what consciousness comes from. And but we do understand that like biology does have a major component in our consciousness. And it's possible, I'm not sure, but I think Nietzsche might have been the first person to say that. Particularly in this, because he talks about one of the lines, and I'll pull up the actual line here. I have them all on my phone. This is a paraphrase. I wrote this out. One inclined towards psychological thinking will apply this to his own sickness when in times of sickness. And boy, is that fucking true. Um, like, that you don't even have to have like. I think one of the interesting things about what he said, the way he puts it, is like it can be true about you, or it could be true about the most profound thinker of all time. But it's there, but it's both true. You know what I
Mm.
mean? So like it's a fact that when I get sick, I will like go like, I wonder if this is like as bad as that time I was sick when I was like 8 and shit like that. And you just start putting your brain through steps that it hasn't been through in a long time, and it probably shouldn't go through all the time, but it does go revert to previous patterns that again, eternal reversion here or eternal return here. When you like, oh, I'm sick again. Oh, I'm gonna think about the same goofy shit that I think about last time I was sick, and I'm going to muse about my psychological disposition during this illness. And I don't know, there's something really poignant about that is that, and it's not just being sick, by the way. I think he may even, maybe that's what he was thinking about when he wrote it or whatever, but this is kind of like, maybe this is more speaking to his entire idea of eternal return. But like when you go back to the same places, be they physical places that you can actually go and visit, or mental places such as being sick or being dumped or being lonely or being, you know what I mean? Whenever you come back to the, you end up returning to previous patterns of thought and stuff like that. And I just think he nailed it with saying that.
Sure. Absolutely. And on that same topic, I thought what he was saying about one's the state of your physiology will dictate the state of your thinking.
Yeah.
If you're and he the advantages of my fickle health, he calls it. He
Yeah.
whether it's whether it's him enacting his own philosophy, which is just taking what comes and, making and saying, no, I love this. This is great. And coughing up whatever blue, black or green or red or, shit is coming out of him. But, or, I wonder, he's still, this all reads to me as very manic depressive. And
Yeah.
I think the books are really his, we're catching him at different peaks and valleys of his,
Yeah, it reminds me of Daniel Johnston.
sure. There
Yeah.
you
You know
go.
what I mean?
You think Nietzsche could have benefited from nicotine? Probably.
You
That's
don't
all.
think he
He
had it?
didn't have access to nicotine.
Did he ever write about it? Did he ever talk about it? You'd think he would.
Maybe it was just such a given that everybody did it that he didn't bother writing about it.
Mm.
Yeah, or I mean, it could have been when you get put in a chair, then that take it away from you or not give it to you, right? Because
Oh,
there's
sure.
yeah. I hope he was allowed.
What I wonder is,
Hope he could
he seemed,
zen.
yeah, give Fred a Zin. No, he's gonna swallow it again.
He's
It's
gonna
fine.
choke on it, yeah. He's gonna get worked up about a fucking bird or something.
So, um, and I found the beginning of this,
Give him some snooze.
the
Pack his cheek.
I guess cheek for him. He spits all on his own. Don't he can do that?
Yeah, that's just how German people talk, dude.
Yeah. Which I mean, do you guys know much about his, final what 9, 10 years? He
I don't
was
know shit.
he was conscious, to
I
varying
think he was
levels throughout that
faking.
time.
He was just faking. He was seeing who would care.
It's kind of like
Oh.
in my mind, it's like Stephen Hawking without the device that lets him spit to talk.
Sure, yeah.
But but I don't actually know. It's
This is
not well documented if I recall. There's some pictures and no output like writing wise. And
there's
so
video. There's video. Many videos of him. I was watching them and it made me sad.
really
Oh, dude, yeah, you can pull them up on YouTube readily enough. Just
like doing speeches or just
no footage of
hanging
him
out.
just
Okay.
shaking or
Okay.
sitting very still in this last few years. So this is film that would have been taken in the 1890s, right up
Right.
until 1900. And it's just so it's an irony that I think we should get to at some point is how the obvious you know the obvious cause we could say is some kind of degenerative brain disease brought on by venereal whatever the hell, but there was like a, a literal moment from moment to moment when people said, oh no, he snapped. I'm sure he was always, people are always
I mean, yeah. Even at his best, I'm sure people were like, "This guy's fucking nuts."
but that's the thing, yeah. But it's not like there's many stories of the day Nietzsche snapped. It's like, no, there's one story.
Yeah, I
And-
bet.
Yeah.
Do
and
we
it's
have documentation of that?
yeah, it's the story of him witnessing the whipping of a horse by the carriage guy. And
I don't know that. I don't know
You don't
this.
know
I
about- oh,
literally all
brother.
I engaged
Don't know
with
about the horse whip?
he's
No.
yeah, dude, I think this is all he is I think he is just poisoned by by recognizing what the structure and what the structure of the world is. You know, I think he saw I think he understood things. I think he knew what it was, but he could not bear to accept that he would not play a decisive role in things, unfortunately. And I say that, ironically, we're talking about him now, but um, this all goes back to the scapegoat mechanism. This goes back to
Gerard.
Nietzsche. This all goes back to Girard, and further back yet to the New Testament with the conclusion, the fulfillment of this thing that we've been, I don't know, to differing, to exponential degrees, more and more. It spread, the idea of concern for the least of us, it spreads like any other. It spreads like a disease that cannot recede. You cannot, without extreme force, get the idea out of people's heads that they should not kill the innocent and the
I see
weak.
what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So you're
I'm
saying
sorry. I just,
I
wandering
think
through
let me
this.
try to piece this together here. You're talking like Nietzsche. You've been reading too much
Yeah,
Nietzsche here.
I've been reading all this Nietzsche.
Sounds like you read Genealogy of Morals too, or dipped in.
That it. Yeah,
but
please.
no, I
You
hang
know
on.
what I'm
I think
talking
I know
about.
what you're saying though. So what you're saying
I'm all
is
worked
that
up.
Nietzsche here is the guy who goes like, yeah. All that slave morality shit where we feel bad for people who are pussies. Fuck that, bro. I'm badass. I'm sick. I'm the best. Fuck all these pussies. I put them in the camel clutch. And then it was ironically, and you're saying ironically, he fucking flipped his fucking mustache when he saw a guy whipping a horse.
Oh,
And he felt bad, and he realized possibly that it might be something hardwired into him beyond his sort of conscious reckoning, that perhaps it was a shock to his system that he too, Mr. Ubermensch, Mr. I've risen above the need for human prescribed moralities. And he too is emotionally affected by the simple, most common image of the 19th century, a man whipping a horse. Possibly the most common thing that happened in the 19th century is a
a
man whipping a
beast
horse.
of burden.
Huh.
A beast of burden. Yeah, like you say, something that is as common as
They didn't have Model T yet.
I don't think he considered himself the Uberman.
I know he didn't. I know. But he conceived of the Ubermensch though, so he's the guy
Yeah,
who coined it.
and also of the evolution of morality is like tracks pretty well. And I can't.
It does change, yeah.
And then there's the will of the strong is undone by the will of the slaves when they're organized enough, and
Yep.
then the priests seem to, or the clerical class or something, they have their own will, which is tangential or above the slaves. That tracks too. And then he sort of does a turn on those people in his own way, because he's pretty cynical of religion. That we know all this about treating, or the so-called enlightened people in his day know all these things about treating each other equal and fair, but it's not extending to outside of their own convenience, and it's certainly not extending to the beasts of burden, I guess. And maybe that's like a lot of words to say not very much, but I've always wondered if he snapped his own mind, if he had enough self-control, if he saw the point, and just said, fuck it, right? If I keep thinking about this, I'm gonna snap my mind, but that's who I am. And so
Feels
here we
good,
go.
man.
Snap. Yeah.
feels good.
If
Yeah,
as a
I think there's something
heroic
to that.
thing, like I told you before the intro, that I've had every feeling about him in rereading this thing and going back to that, 20 years ago almost, when I read them the first time, and I was absolutely enthralled. My most heroic view of him is that he snapped his own fucking mind. He was the ultimate, like, let her rip.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate to. I really relate to that, because like when I look into like this conspiracy stuff, and not just conspiracies, but yeah, I guess it'd be broadly viewed as conspiracy stuff. But when I look into like the stuff where it's like, there's two Lee Harvey Oswalds and like this serial killer network creating child sexual abuse material like that to sell to the royals in Europe and stuff. And it's like, oh no, it's all real. And often deploy this metaphor, of course, but it feels like I've taken 1d6 of sanity damage every time I read one of these books.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, man. I'm willing to go there. I'm like Nietzsche. I'll fucking walk right into that portal of being crazy if it means I know I can know as much as I can,
I
And
Yeah.
that leads me to
well,
my absolute favorite Fred Nietzsche quote. It's a poem. No, most people hate his
mm,
poems, by the way. Or
no,
I don't know that that's true. That's not
w-
true.
I picked up one poem too. So I'm
But
curious which
this
one
is
you
my
did.
favorite poem. Number 3, Undaunted. Where you stand, dig deep and pry. Down there is the well. Let the obscurantist cry. Down there's only hell. I think that's the best thing Fred Nietzsche wrote in his entire career
damn.
because it perfectly embodies what my my entire world like
Yeah.
impetus has been my whole life, where it's like don't go there, and I'm like I gotta go there.
Something tells me there's something there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you guys are saying don't go there, I better go there.
I better get there
The,
quick.
I don't have I didn't do well writing down the passages, but there's like after the
I just
poems,
screenshotted them all.
there's a collect where he's sort of discussing the kind of person that he never finds in his everyday life, the one that he would love to share how much his self-examinations and things. That's why he's ostensibly writing instead, because at least maybe if he goes wide, the work will find these people. But there's like a real loneliness, and I guess what you were saying reminding me of that, because
Mhm.
he maybe I'm losing my train of thought right as I'm saying it, but
No, I think I know what you're saying. You're saying it's lonely down here.
yeah. And like
Yeah.
if you're gonna pay attention, there's more reasons not to pay attention. Just like I was, yeah, there's
Yeah,
more.
so people think you're
If you could,
normal, so
yeah, if I could steer into it, I fucking would, and come what may. But I just can't. That's
yeah.
that's why I end up in the far reaches of Telegram, sharing links with certain people, and I just can't help it. Or I'm embracing it at this point. That's a very Nietzschean thing to do. If you can't help
Yeah.
it, embrace it.
Yeah,
And
it is
this
very
was the
Nietzschean.
start of my whatever intellectual life was going way too far with this cheesehead. And I've kept the demeanor to this day,
Yeah.
which is, thanks, Freddie.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I had nothing but a negative view on him again because I this is my first time engaging with his actual work. I think there is a huge gulf between what, like, the academic discourse around his work and his work. You get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because, like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you ask around, like, in pop philosophy circles, I don't even know what that would look like these days, but they'll be like, yeah, the guy who invented being a tranny. Like
right,
that's like the reputation he bears these days, basically, is like this, like, yeah, it's where you like transcend into a new form of existence, which means doing cosmetic surgery to make you look like a thing that already exists.
right,
It's Nietzsche literally his oeuvre, if you will. It's kind of like a discography. It's like you kind of just pick what
Yeah,
songs you
I
like,
know what you mean by that. Yeah.
and people are not too interested in because he really did not put a fine point on his thinking. It kind of reached it's funny because he never really did decline. He kind of did reach the
He had a
zenith, the
short
peak.
career as far as where all his writings came from.
Sure, yeah, I think he taught from
Basically
24 to
10 years.
34, and then
Yeah.
44, and then by 55 he died.
And his illness in that regard was perfectly timed, right? Just as anyone would want to ask him about it, and he could have an impact on explaining it. Like it'd be like
I'm 34 right now,
if
by the way.
if Jordan Peterson got hit by a bus right after his Pinocchio speech, and we never saw him, not want to read Solzhenitsyn's second book or whatever,
Yeah.
and he would just live in our minds as like, oh geez, maybe I will
Yeah,
clean my room.
if he never came back from Russia, like he died of a fucking benzo overdose.
Yeah, so maybe like not. I'll be Protestant for a minute, but like maybe God was smiling down on him and with him the whole fucking time, and he's like, do you know what would be really funny, Fred? I'm gonna pull your plug right now and sail you off into the distance. It's gonna be fucking awesome, right?
Yeah. Well, who's the other thing? Maybe God had an insight that he would become really cringe if he kept going.
Right. Or like again, the superhero, the Ubermensch Nietzsche, the one who snaps his own mind, like Thanos
Yeah.
is his own fucking
Yeah.
existence. Perfect
Like a
timing, right? He's
bullwhip.
looking at
Yeah.
it, he's like, you know what? I'm about, the last 10% we carry over, and then I'm good. Like, okay. I big doubt, but
Yeah,
it's
of
really
course.
perfect, and that's how you get in every television show, and get read by
True.
every college kid and more. At
Yeah,
least
I'm not even a
before.
college kid and I read it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have no choice. Scott, I've heard you say once or twice, if maybe three times, that nihilism is the spirit of the age. I would agree.
Yeah.
People will,
I
often
don't think
make.
that's a hot take, right?
No, certainly not. I mean, it's only hot for those who,
Oh, who think they believe something? Yeah, I know. Yeah, they
Whoa.
don't though.
Am I
brother.
doing a nihilism, bro?
Yeah.
So people make the mistake of thinking, Nietzsche, was a self described nihilist. Um,
That's
mm,
crazy. It's
that's for
such a great.
yeah. You have to read the book to like,
You have to read it wrong. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
or
or not read it
average
at
him
all.
with his time in the chair when he wasn't producing anything. Like, show a picture of that guy, and maybe you're like, maybe I
That guy
believe
is
it,
a
but not his
nihilist.
writing.
He's just literally going.
He doesn't
Yeah.
care.
He literally believes nothing.
What if in The Big Lebowski, instead of a guy in a floatable raft in the pool, it was Nietzsche floating in the pool?
Yeah.
Oh, him, that's just Fred. He's a nihilist. He doesn't care about anything. I fuck you.
We want the money, look, but we want the money, Nietzsche.
We want before we get off the point, I think this, Mike, you say, was it a self, like a determined, decision to break from reality? And I think, I don't know if we're that. I don't know if we're I don't know if it's as possible as breaking your own neck, if that's even possible. But
Right.
I I think there's something to things coming to a head and you deciding to deny, or to, I think there's only so many veils of denial, so many levels uh of delusion that you can build up in your own head before you lose track of where it all began, who you know I think, and this goes back to, his the Ubermensch thing, his condemnation of Christianity in his own words. He detests the idea that we would be slowed down as a species, as a race, by anything that's less than, that can't hobble along on its own. He, I mean, I can pull, I don't have anything from gay science that really sprung out to me, but
Well,
his, go ahead, Mike.
oh,
You have something?
I don't have it in front of me either, but he's basically just right at the beginning ribbing on the not these essentialism or utilitarianism, and just saying like,
Yeah, he
well,
doesn't like utilitarianism
Hmm.
either.
no, but just useful breeders, right? Like none of this like psychology or philosophy really matters, because you guys will, the ones who aren't reading this will just go and have a couple kids, and
Yeah. I
sort of
mean, he's
right,
kind of right about that. Yeah, I was gonna say
for
he
the
is trying to
species,
like
at the
he
species level for sure. And but if you stand out from the crowd, or you can't but help for see yourself and how you might have an impact in the world, and how the world's spinning around you, and you know if you have an interest in foreign policy or something, and you spend most of your time talking to people who can't believe that it affects them, what happens over there, like, yeah, it you start to relate to this guy.
I
uh,
definitely do. Yeah, for sure. Another thing is again specifically related, hone in on like the whole God is dead thing. He's is even though again Patrick just I illuminated the fact that like he was doing, he himself says I'm attacking Christianity and the system of morals of Christianity, prescribed morals as an idea. Um, but you can tell that he is also upset at this idea that God is dead now, because he, even in the same thought, this sort of scenario that he sketches with the madman who seeks God, the madman says, um, I'm speaking for people in the future. This has not yet come to pass.
Hmm.
Or what I or he also says, more
Am
importantly,
I
he
too
says something
soon?
like, yeah, I'm too soon, and he says something
Am I
else
too
like,
soon?
what has given us the ability to drink the ocean? What like, and shall we not become God ourselves if we've, since we've, we've bloodied him and we've stabbed him with our own hands or whatever? How else have we done this without becoming gods ourselves? And he's talking about the eventual, in his mind, Ubermensch that will come, a man and God hybrid, as it were. Um, but he is also saying, "Oh no, we killed him already, but there's no Ubermensch to take his place. Essentially, it's too early."
Hmm.
So he's like upset at this idea that even for like the breeders, as we were just discussing, like the people who he views as being like this human cattle, essentially. Um, he's like, now they won't even have that. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to be living in an age of nihilism, as we have identified has come to pass in his future. Um, and they're not even going to have this, in his opinion, deficient conception of divinity and morality and stuff. So he's very, again, I think, Patrick, you said earlier that it's fairly manic depressive. I think this is one of the depressive moments of the book, essentially, is he's saying, "Oh, woe is we as the
Yeah.
human race, that we now are going to be living in an era with where God is dead and we haven't even built anything to replace him. We've done the unthinkable. We've done the thing that is nearly impossible. We've made gods of ourselves and killed God,
Hmm.
but at the same time, we haven't actually become gods ourselves. So there's this massive hole which can be filled in with many, many different things, and that is the history of the 20th century."
And what's thing is though, we killed God. What he means to say, secularism is the
Secular
default.
humanism.
Yeah, is the default source to which people ascribe, morality. It's like, oh, of course we're decent, we're good, we're evolved, we're civilized.
we're
Um,
doing science.
we're doing science, sure. Um,
We have a very English outlook on the world.
it's far enough from the uh, fulcrum point of history where people have started to forget that it was not the state, and it was not the community, it was not people
Or
who,
celebs,
or
culture creators, not Joe Rogan.
who taught us how to behave with one another, and
Yeah.
taught us, the intricacies of how to navigate, you know, popular, societies that are constantly in flux. And Scott, we've talked about this. It's back to Gerard with it's, a group is who they exclude. So if we
Can I pull a quote on that?
hit me, please.
Hit you with it. What laws betray? Number 43. It is a serious mistake to study the penal code of a people as if it gave expression to the national character. The laws do not betray what a people are, but rather what seems to them foreign, strange, uncanny, outlandish. The laws refer to the exceptions to the morality of mores, and the severest penalties are provide for what accords with the mores of a neighboring people. So meaning what he
Perfect.
means by that is exactly what you're saying is like, don't, when you look at the laws and customs of a people, it doesn't say anything about what they're like. What it says is what they're not like, because it punishes that which is different than them.
Now, if we take
I like
Nietzsche's,
that quote, by the way.
yeah, that's a good pull. I mean, I have something here
Oh, and
somewhere.
by the way, I'm sorry that we're not just reading the book to you with little to no comment, by the way,
I'm
and we're
tempted
actually
to
grappling with the ideas in the fucking
in real
in
time.
the fucking in the book.
I think this book is perfect. Like, don't read, never read, and especially not this book. But if you happen to have it, just keep it in your bathroom, because like one at a time, the numbered sections, find the origin of each one is usually an inconsistency, but like
Right.
it's I don't I don't mean to be mean about it, because I'm not the proto rationalist, not by a long shot, but like, you can get these things because we live in a material world or fallen world, depending. You can get inconsistencies very close together with poetry, and it just sets something off in your mind. And here's a guy who found 400 of them, or 300 and something, and wrote them all down. And that's what he wanted, was you to just glimpse the world the way that I don't even know if it's how he saw it, but it's how he chose to describe it. It doesn't. So the quotes are
I
great.
told it is. I told Patrick this before the show. I didn't tell you this, Mike, but I read this book 6 times.
That's sorry. Sorry.
I read this 6 times in prep. I mean, how long ago did I ask you to do the show? It was like 2
Yeah.
months ago.
No,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
yeah.
we've been sitting on
Thanks
this.
for
And it
reading.
took
Yeah,
me, I
it's
would
not
say it took
easy.
me to like the 5th time to get it at all. I mean it. I'm not being glib. But after that, I'm like, oh, I get it now. I actually get what the fuck this psycho is talking about.
He was wrestling with it, man. And if you've ever felt lost
He's
because
having a
you're
gay
wrestling with
science.
it,
He's doing gay
nobody
science,
cares.
dude.
Yeah.
He's doing gay science. He's having a good time. He's not just, by the way, when I say a good time, I don't actually mean it's a good time.
Excruciating
Always.
time.
It's
But in his
excruciating at times.
words,
Right, exactly.
yeah.
It encompasses the entire range of emotions that one mortal human being can experience.
Smooth ice is paradise for those who dance with expertise. Which, the smoother ice is, the more likely you are to slip. Yeah,
Right.
he's leaning into the slip, I guess.
Yeah, he stumble. He's talking about
He's
stumbling.
brother. Yeah, exactly. Now back to that. He's leaning into the stumble. He's insisting on being wise in the
Which, okay,
face
so we
of
got to say this.
Christian
I don't know if
foolish
you know this. I don't
wisdom.
know if you know this, Mike, but the stumbling block is Satan. That's what Satan means in ancient Hebrew, and
Mhm.
Shalah.
also
Sorry.
and also what's it called? When you're talking yeah, but stumbling block is what's what it means, by the way. It means a stumbling block. It's something you trip over. Literally. So whenever you see and my foot will not stumble, he's literally talking about in the Bible, I mean. And
Yeah.
whenever you hear my foot will not stumble, you're talking about God catching you from falling into the negative sort of social patterns that are encoded into our animal brain, that elevation of God and the divine it separates us from, or keeps us from falling into those pitfalls, as it were. Very, in this sense, a double entendre. You know, it's literally something to trip on. Scandalon is something that you trip on.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
scandal, yeah, that's it. Whenever my foot will not stumble, he's talking about scandal and scandalon, which is it's something that you trip on. Yeah. So okay, I don't know if you knew that etymological bit of um, trivia
No,
there.
if I did, I'd forgotten. Yeah, uh, that the philologist in the room would be proud.
Yeah, well, I
He,
think Patrick's right about that, and that is what Nietzsche's talking about here, when he's sort of begging you to make the connection with the slip. By the way,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but that probably is what he's talking about: stumbling and falling into scandalon.
And he's
Um,
kind of deserve. Well, yeah, I'll go as far. He deserves credit for what he doesn't say more than most people because
yeah,
Mhm.
you in the auteur world we live in now of postmodernism, and there is no author, right? Like if, that's doing Nietzsche to himself, right? There's no God, says Nietzsche. There's no author, says the people who read Nietzsche. So
yeah,
here we live. You can take whatever meaning you want from these things because he wasn't very prescriptive. Um, and it might have been on purpose because
Mhm.
he was just getting things as close together until a spark went off, right? And hopefully you're not in a gas filled room, but
Mhm.
it, it's really
with
exciting when
windows.
you first encounter it. Um,
There's a breeze.
yeah,
Um, the when he talks about the frolic of his philosophy, do you think he's sort of doing a sort of third person, um however, someone smarter than me can tell me what exactly the terms are for this, but looking at his emotional responses and his thought processes and whatever, like you were saying earlier, Scott, the trains of thought that he falls into at these, intervals in his life where he gets sick again, and he has quite the subject at hand, you know, in his own self to analyze. Um, and if I think that's probably why it speaks so much to, every young dejected person who gets their hands
Mm.
on like a paragraph, and that's enough for them to just like totally spin off for 8 years into whatever they got
mhm.
from
Whatever
it.
they were headed for anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now with a citation. Um, but that's, trouble enough as that is, worse yet is who takes a, gleeful, license from Nietzsche in terms of, they see this, they see what he describes as the Ubermensch who, excels, beyond everyone else. Uh, and says, "Yeah, I'll do that." And then we have people who certainly feel that way, more than the kings of yore ever could have. Yeah, is
People like
that
Jonathan Greenblatt, people like
sure?
Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. Jeffrey Epstein, dare I say,
or the ones whose names we do not
literally
know.
flaunted all by, or people like, even hell, people like Michael Aquino,
Mhm.
people like
But
Michael Aquino, who just very, very nakedly, with knowing everyone knew, would just, do the bad thing at the daycares and stuff. Like, that is somebody taking license with this idea of like, I'm a mover and I can just do whatever I like. I'm some sort of evolved human being. And I mean, again, it's not surprising to me if you look at like sort of the sort of under philosophical underpinnings in the own words of people like Michael Aquino. They will say like, hey, Nietzsche, that's my guy right there,
well, yeah, because Nietzsche, blatantly says that he thinks that there should be rules for some and others.
Mhm.
That there should just be rules, sure, for the many, and then whoever can take, can take charge, more
just the
power to
entire
them.
state of Israel obviously thinks there's rules for them that are special, that
I
no,
don't
that
know if
don't, or the,
I was paying enough attention. I mean, I've read this enough times, but he rarely says should, but he will use a description of how things are to, explain, because it's true that there are people who exclude themselves when they make the rules. That's the point of it.
right.
Um, but yeah, the positivism, because he's lacking in it or intentionally avoiding it. If you're like ex post facto, oh great, we killed a bunch of Palestinians and we need a philosophical reason, or someone's
Right.
asking for
Then
a
you can go, well, we're
philosophical
actually
reason.
better than them. Right.
Yeah, we'll pluck it out of here, and because it's not being an
I mean,
ubermensch
that's what that
that
BAP guy is, right?
yeah.
Isn't that his whole thing? Is like, he's a Jew and he's like, I'm a Nietzschean, and the Israelis are based because they're like Nietzschean Ubermenches who don't get GGAF. What do you care about what women think?
But it's
Like,
a
oh,
little
babies are dying.
this
What do you care about women think? Isn't that like the whole shtick?
right.
Pun intended.
It's a little dishonest because he Nietzsche didn't make a positive
He's our
claim about
guy,
the
though, right,
Ubermensch. He
guys?
just said like
Right,
if
guys?
there'll be from here, this world with all these rules like the way they are, there will be something transcendent to the rules as a man. And there
Have you ever
was,
read
and that's
Mike?
the
Have you
New
ever?
Testament, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
aside
yeah.
from that,
I
Freddie,
agree.
like
Yeah,
here we go. Maybe another reason it might be excruciating being you, but yeah, the the we're just making you know blue a blue movie for Netflix, and we need a philosophical reason is
right.
usually why Nietzsche gets involved. And then sometimes better, like the first season of True Detective was like Nietzschean in an honest way, in the
Nietzsche
in the
shaped butt.
soul searching way, I think, more so. Like that's the Nietzsche I still
Yeah, isn't
like.
that like the theme of that show? Is that everything repeats anyway?
Eh,
In
eh.
form, yeah. And then I was talking to
I haven't
the
seen it, so I don't know.
oh, okay. Yeah, there's like one actually well placed Nietzsche quote in the end of the first season. Um just which is more about, man, it's hard down here thinking about why all the things happen. Uh,
Mm, sure. That's exactly what I was saying before. When I was like looking into the finders and all that stuff, it's like, oh man, this really hurts my head
Mhm.
and it sucks. But I would never turn away from this. You know what I mean? Like, I
But
right.
wouldn't.
I think that's a different thing than what Nietzsche would turn away from. He, what he was insisting on staring headlong into was, pure solipsism, egotism. I'm throwing out a bunch of
Yeah.
isms,
Yeah.
someone with more degrees than me, my 3/4 of one degree, can tell me uh I'm wrong, but it doesn't, I don't know where I'm going with this other than to say that it's not a, what would you call it? I read somewhere
I'm not
that
in your head, Patrick.
I the in short, I read somewhere there's nothing about Nietzsche's philosophy that does not harden your heart. I think that is true. I think that is true because
I think that's true. Well, I'll say why I think that's true is because his
yeah,
ideal guy is a pretty hardened sort of character, right?
yeah, yeah.
And the people he likes in history are also like that as well.
So what there's a different thing than what you're staring at. This is what I wanted to get back to is, he's just staring at something that will affirm his, whatever he had going on in his small, in that apartment that he was in when he was writing these things and having his headaches. Scott, what will lose sleep over is, the stuff
Oh,
that
I
other
sleep like a
people,
baby.
lucky duck. Um, what you concern yourself with are the things that other people would rather not. And for that, and because, those things are, as horrible as they are, and probably and definitely propagandized, there's certain, ways in which the things uh we discuss are actually made more
Investigate.
are made more scandalous and absurd and ridiculous than, they are in some senses, or, those aspects of these things are heightened just to make people less inclined to
Yeah,
want
absolutely. Like that
to
poem I was
Justification.
talking about.
yeah. So I think what you're, staring at is different than what he's staring at, which is he's staring at uh the obvious answer, which is that his ethos cannot stand. Because it's as ephemeral as, a dance, the dance that he, insists on you, enjoying and reveling in, but, you know all the same. And, are, Mike, please tell me if I'm
No,
talking
I'm just
nonsense, because I don't, I
I
read
thought
it once
there's like the minor theme,
slowly.
because it comes much earlier, is Dionysus and Apollo.
That's what we're,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And so two ways of taking something serious, I guess you could call it that, or worshiping a thing that in reality you can celebrate it, or you can pontificate and analyze, and they're both kind of dead ends. And maybe you're talking about how if Nietzsche had his druthers, I don't know. I think he tried, because he is like has a bipolarity between those two things, to keep wavering, to stay in the middle of those. Because if you just stop, you're like, hey, stop the train, I want to analyze everything, write it all down, map it all out. And no, there's a party here, have a drink, is the common refrain. And if you wanted to just go off gallivanting, that wouldn't work for most people either. And that's the positivism I've ever found with Nietzsche, is that he's not only is he paying a lot of attention to his own life, when there is a choice to make, he's quick to go back and second guess himself, and actually try the other approach, I guess. Or that would be like the Nietzschean way.
Not to, yeah, definitely not to make excuses and stutter and explain yourself.
No,
That's
what I do.
well,
He's just he's like,
that's what he would
he's
do.
an anti-identitarian. So if
Mm.
you find yourself in an identity, break out. and you'll
Right.
because don't worry, you'll be in another identity soon enough, and you
Sure.
break again.
Yeah, don't get too hung up on uh
Oh yeah, I like this whole thing about
yeah.
short-lived habits.
What
And it's true too. It's like when a habit feels like, oh, I'll always have this for lunch on Fridays, and
Right.
it's like, watch that die hard pretty soon.
so true.
Yeah, as soon
Yeah.
as the decision's made, right? As soon as you go to Costco and get all the shit for it for
All
yes, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Literally, there's nothing less temporary than nothing less permanent than a permanent habit that you've decided and spent money in order to facilitate.
all it
yeah.
takes is one ingredient being out of stock and it's over. You'll never have it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. Couple of one of the things I wanted to hit is so he has this whole thing about two things. So there's a societal, so he identifies like his version of like the craving of suffering, right? So I think Mishima did a lot of good work with this later on in the 1960s. But this idea that like man, in order to find profundity, the easiest way for a man to sort of experience profundity on demand is to seek out hardship, essentially. Um, and I think that's like a big Mishima theme, by the way, is in Son of Steel. He really talks about um, sort of the collective, ritual creation of physical hardship in order to feel together as one unit or something, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's sort of an echo of Nietzsche. But he also talks about on the conversive side of that, in contrary to what he is sort of in keeping with his thinking, is this sort of slave morality, societal instinct to like sort of elevate victimhood and elevate suffering, and also be like, specifically he talks about like how like when you're talking to somebody at a party and they're like, well, I grew up really poor. It's just like it's always like a fixture of any sort of origin story is like you'll focus on all the hard things about your life or something, and not
Yeah.
like very rarely will you meet somebody and they're like, I had an awesome life growing. I've never had a hard time in my life. I've been happy my whole life. My parents are great. I got great siblings, great relationship with my siblings. Career's going good. Doesn't
Yeah.
happen. That's not something that's
Yeah.
our society sort of views as profound.
Mm.
And it also it's just something not that it's just not something that like you something about our society that doesn't make us that makes us sort of fall into that pitfall, I guess.
I
And
think
he thinks
we
that sucks, even
yeah.
though he likes suffering.
Well, I get he likes suffering. Sure,
He likes
but
he likes
yeah,
experiencing the suffering. He doesn't want to relate it to other people, I guess, even though he does.
he's probably astute enough to recognize that at that point in time, people were making much to do about nothing at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. This is the same time period in which Freud's covering up all that child rape, by the way.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, interesting. Well, my point only to mean that victimism has been a stripe of
Honor.
social yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's a way of certain types of establishing their spot in whatever social
Yeah,
situation.
I think in this he's most specific about feminism in
Mm.
the like 200s thereabouts.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
suffragettism, I guess it would be more specifically.
yeah, women's suffrage and feminism doesn't have a word for it yet. Um,
Yeah.
Did
he's
I mean
he's
it's
he's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
roadmapped just so many things that we find excruciating today, which is
Do you
amazing.
do you know much
Smug
about
ease. How about smug ease is one of my favorite concepts that he introduced to me, is this idea of smug ease, which he's talking about smug ease the whole book, but he only puts words to it about 2/3 of the way through. Um, But he says like even like he's like in today's society we even look back at like the early Christian books and go, yeah, but we actually understand God much better now than like the, you know what I mean, than
Yeah.
like the Saint Thomas of Aquinas and
Right.
shit. It's like,
Yeah.
but I read
Yeah.
Gerard, so I get like what's really going on in the
Oh, sure.
Gospels.
Oh, don't I? Of
I was like,
Yeah, like
I'm personally
I
being
watched
attacked by Nietzsche right now.
I watched the stream on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
it's so
seen
true.
the high mountain.
Yeah, I have smug ease at the fact that, oh, listen, I already read Gerard. I get Christianity.
it
Like,
goes the other way too, right? Like I
yeah,
don't have much to say for myself after 20-page honors thesis on Nietzsche. It's just, except for all the excruciating moments and a little bit of what I remember, right? Like,
Do
who gives a shit? It's just
well,
academia.
could you speak to his because he had quite a weird relationship with Richard Wagner. Do you know
yeah, he
much
was
about
like in
that?
the in like or I was talking earlier about Ayn Rand and like her objectivist
Mm.
circle. Wagner had his own objectivist circle essentially.
It's weird how these things repeat like a
Yeah,
flat,
it is. Yeah,
I
it is.
I
like a
have to look
flat,
up
ugly circle.
the one because he just prefers another German composer, and for Germany at the time, uh, because they're trying to make an identity around German things because they're German people, but and
Yeah, because
Prussia is
there's
kind of
no
a
Germany
thing,
yet.
but there's no Germany yet. Yeah, so um, who's the but I can't remember who he preferred. I was reading it earlier today, and that's probably why I was preparing for this a little bit. But basically, he
I'll
just
tell.
wasn't in Camp Wagner, and most people were. As far as I can tell, that's why people keep dragging him through because he just missed on that. Because Hitler would come later and pick Wagner, and then people would go back through everything
I mean,
Nietzsche said.
Wagner slaps
You missed it.
musically speaking.
Yeah, but I think Nietzsche's favorite thing about Wagner was his wife. He really dug on Cosima Wagner. He really
Oh,
he liked her a lot, yeah.
I
And
didn't know
his
that. Is that a
and
fact?
yeah, yeah, and his what would we call Nietzsche's sitting era? Well, is that the acoustic years? Yeah.
We'll
Uh,
call that the vegetable
Oh, the
years.
yeah,
the
un-
farmer's
unplugged or plugged.
that's so funny. The unplugged era? Oh, shit. So during Nietzsche's unplugged era, he was writing letters to Cosima Wagner saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, honey, how about you come empty
He was
my
faking. I've just decided he's faking. He did not actually lose his mind. He was like, I could only possibly post cringe from now on. I better act like a vegetable for the rest of my
He's
life.
just getting his sister to write these
Yeah.
horny posts to
Yeah.
Cosimo Wagner. I
Or
mean,
yeah, maybe it's actually his sister was writing the letters because she's a lesbo or some shit.
that
um
Um,
that
oh, here,
SSD
this one,
just
this
isn't
is a
enough
good
for
one.
him.
174 apart. Parliamentarianism, that is, public permission to choose between five basic political opinions,
hmm.
flatters and wins the favor of all those who would like to seem independent and individual, as if they fought for their opinions. Ultimately, however, it is indifferent whether the herd is commanded to have one opinion or permitted to have five. Whoever deviates from the five public opinions and stands apart will always have the whole herd against him. So basically, Nietzsche has started to listen to the Tom Woods show and has decided to set
I
fire to the 3.3 by 5 index card of allowable opinion.
Oh
Yeah,
shit. Man, I don't have
because
any more
index
index
cards,
cards.
right? Everybody, it's like Tom. We're
That's
just
so
being
funny.
nice.
I think if Tom had listened, I'm sorry, if Fred Nietzsche had listened to Tom's School of Life, he might have gotten his shit together and not
For sure.
and
I was in
not become a vegetable.
the first time I ever listened to the Tom Woods show. I remembered that part of my grade 4 year, I helped the librarian digitize or just throw out old index cards, and it just remember
Sure.
like, why are there index cards? Why is it cards? And then she's like, well, someone makes the cards this perfect shape for the drawers. And I was like, this whole fucking
Well,
system.
you never used
Why?
index cards for like studying though?
Flashcards, sorta. Like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't, because the Xerox machine they would just
Well, no,
give you a
I
set
didn't.
of flashcards, not they wouldn't be ruled like index cards. I
Oh, I
bought
had
them,
the index
thinking,
cards because I would like for if I were to do like a oral presentation or something, I would write out it on that, and then I'd go from
Mm.
page like card to card as I
yeah,
read it.
they've always been there, but just because like you can steal them from your dad because he's a dork and he's got index cards, that's
Yes, that is
why
what
you have
happened.
them.
Yes,
And then so Tom Woods was just like, it was perfect because like, who am I dealing with? And it's like a guy with a drawer full of index cards.
that his
And like,
kids are
okay,
stealing
cool.
to do their paper on fucking Typhoid Mary in fourth grade.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Uh, so does I like a good index card. I'm glad
I
they're
wish
around.
I no my
I set
uh,
fire of all the index cards of allowable opinion myself.
I wish my executive function was that high to have things on cards and organized and collated. I wish, man. It's not me, Tom. It's Tommy.
No,
Boy.
you need a what you need is a what's he do? What's he do? Probably some kind of calisthenic. Yeah, he's looking good. Good for you, Tom Woods. I want to talk about Dionysus.
Okay.
All right.
Please.
So, you guys have any thoughts to this? Because Nietzsche had his obvious he dallied in these and the Greeks, and he took a lot from Heraclitus, which I found interesting when I started reading about Heraclitus.
Heraclitus.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on. Um, his his whole shtick, his what was called what somewhere I read somewhere else was the formative the original unifying principle, I think, is the logos of violence. That logos, what we take from the biblical tradition, meaning the word, you know, to the Greeks is violence, meaning the unification of opposites, emphasis being with force, you know. So, and that's their their originating premise for how society and how the universe and how cultures and governments and how everything will come to be is through, and Nietzsche leans into this layer when he using Dionysus and the Dionysian myth as is reference, that it's normal and good and it couldn't be any other way that life be fed by death, that uh the
Well,
progression
life
of
is fed by death.
no, it's fed by life.
Yeah, you can't have death. Like
Right. I guess I
we
see
don't
what
talk
you're
about
saying.
dead
Yeah.
things that were never alive. A rock isn't dead because
Yeah.
it's
Well,
alive.
I direct you to this other quote, which I believe that Louis C.K. stole as a joke later. Let me pull it up here. Oh man.
Talk about a drooling
Oh yeah,
buffoon
this
and a
Got it,
is
got
horny
it.
this is in our
jerking
DM
off.
somewhere, but I
I
can't
got it. I
remember.
got it. Let us be on guard against saying that death is contrary to life. The living being is only a species of dead being, and if that, a very rare species. So he's basically saying,
You
hey, everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean everyone who's in this room, because if everyone, most people is dead, which is the Louis C.K. bit, of course. I believe the album is
Shoot up.
called Hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and I remember thinking it was very funny at the time and true. But I think Fred Nietzsche here is of that thinking.
I'm
Yeah.
not, but yeah.
Amen. Here, here. Yeah, no, brings
That-
me to
this is
this. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
This is like this is it's like he's goading me to be Apollonian. Just like doesn't make fucking sense. You can't. You're arguing from
Well,
a
yeah, I think he is
contradiction.
goading you to be Apollonian, though, Mike. You realize this,
So
right?
anything
Like,
can be true because your premises are in contradiction. It's like ain't it nice when death begets life? And you're like, yeah, sick, man. What else you got to say? Is like blah blah blah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fine. It's good. It's a neat rhetorical device. It's all okay inside the gay science, but it doesn't track with like with what science purports itself to be. But who knows? You know, they can do a lot of stuff with science now, like convince people without any evidence to do whatever the fuck they want because it's more about the story
right.
than the facts. You know, like isn't that a contradiction? That's that, you know, all those lab animals died and you think it's safe for me to give my 2-year-old? They're like, whatever, man. Like we're all doing it. So
Yeah.
not to
Touch grass. You, bruh, I think you need to
dance
get
on
some
it, dance
pussy.
barefoot on grass, like with a cask full of wine. That's another way I relate to the guy who's just an image in my head. I don't know if he's actually like this, but I tend to the the rational, but nobody likes it. So you got to have fun.
Oh, bro.
And this whole book is kind of doing that, right? Just
For sure, yeah. It's
finding
all
the
about the
finding the
gay
spark.
science.
Yeah. But then if you like go through them, take the poetry out of them, and they're like, they don't make sense. You can't get those things to touch. You can get them to spark, but if you touch them together, nothing's gonna happen. I maybe I'm stretching the metaphor too far.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I think you meaning his, you know, he lapses in and out of coherency.
Because you can
For,
only waver, right? That I think Apollonianism and Dionysianism are polar, and you can go between them, but you can't bring the things from one with you, right? You've got to transition by leaving those things behind, and he like whipsaws through it, and maybe that's what accidentally snapped his mind, but again, relatable, right? Like you can't find your people if you're not one of those two camps, right?
Sure. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I've heard of a secret third way,
Right.
Yeah.
The Tristan
but
Shandy way.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe we can make a contemporary fucking analogy here,
could
where
you?
it's like now we're this sort of like this impetus where we're in a sort of situation, politically speaking, where there's a lot of pressure to sort of give in and go with the flow, guys. What are you blackpilling right now? You know what I mean? And you can't. I mean, and then and by saying anything contrary at all to like what is the zeitgeist, if you will, you are, now you're other. You know what I mean? And I think there's something to what you're saying here, which is like you can't you can't be both.
Mm,
Maybe there's
no,
something
yeah,
very retarded
I don't
and
think you can be either and be yourself if you're going to be honest to
a
yourself.
Dionysian or a Apollonian.
Look, because those are both steering into it. Like, fuck
Yeah.
yeah, let's go. Pass me a beer,
Pass me the
Dionysian,
galaxy glass.
and then the
Galaxy
other,
gas.
yeah, and
hell
then
yeah.
Apollonian is just like it doesn't matter what I think. We're doing this scientific thing, right?
Mhm.
Sure.
Right,
Um, like mechanistically, and you're just a small part of it versus, and the other thing is you're just a small part of too, but you want to figure out what you yourself are. I mean,
I think Nietzsche said, "The world is not a machine." That phrase stuck out to me somewhere in the book, something like that.
Yeah.
which I resonates with me because no, it's an orchestra. There there is something much more yeah. Things are not as fixed as we hope, and thankfully not so. Yeah.
Because just like people get lost in um interpreting the Bible, and then suddenly, well, you need to make this one part into a metaphor to keep going. um it's not really the point, or what, I won't pretend to know the point. I'm losing it from what Patrick just said, but that was I was trying to get to.
Sorry.
No, it's probably my fault.
Okay.
I'm fasting for Lent, so it's like, this is the witching hour for me. I lost it. It was more
Faith is always coveted most and needed most urgently where will is lacking. For will, as the effective command, is the decisive sign of sovereignty and strength. In other words, the less one knows how to command, the more urgently one covets someone who commands severely, a god, a prince, class, physician, father confessor, dogma, or party conscience.
Good stuff.
So when you are a fucking pussy, you desire someone to command over you essentially and put all your faith into somebody. If
it's a
you
common
are
critique of, like, as a Catholic, that's what most people, that's how most people critique me, the person. I'm a
but it isn't just
stooge.
religion. I mean, it's
No, I'm
probably
just
what
saying, but
most
that's
Oh, I
that's
know, I know.
the
I know
personal
you don't
experience
think
I
that.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, maybe I'm a stooge, but I'm doing belief over here. Belief is kind of a separate thing from the will, because just like, well, there's more reasons not to do what's
Well, I think he's
instructed.
misdiagnosing. Here's my thing. I didn't connect with the religious aspect of his comment here so
Mm-hmm.
much. I just think he's misdiagnosing here, as far as like when
Because
you,
I think the next section
particularly in
is
today's
scathing
society, when you
towards
decide to be
priests, right?
religious, you're making a really conscious choice. You're actually going probably fairly contrary to what the overall thrust of our society is. So you're actually exhibiting some degree of will to be like, yes, I do believe. I do believe in God. And despite of the fact that everything in my culture says, stop
Mm-hmm.
doing that. You're doing bad, in fact.
And then you go to a modern church, and most of the people there are just going through the motions because it's what you do. It's what they're,
Right.
and bless them, right? they didn't they don't have the excruciating self-awareness or whatever. Like, not to make
Right.
myself special, but they're just doing it. They've already made plans to do it next week. They're not, you know, they the they're the fish that doesn't know what the water is, kind of thing.
Right.
And I aspire to be that some ways, but also it's just not the way I experience
Of course.
that
Yeah.
thing
But
that
then,
I'm trying to make a bigger part of my life, right?
but my bigger point there with that is that particularly outside of the religious comment, because he does immediately after the religious sort of thing, dogma or party conscience, and God, prince, and class, or prince and class. So those, obviously there's secular examples he gives you there, but I definitely think that that's for fucking sure. People will absolutely, I mean, again, you said common critique. I agree, of course, but never have I ever seen this, such a prevalence to this idea that, like, people have never had less will. You know what I mean? These days,
Yeah.
people don't have any fucking will. You could just like you go into a restaurant and see that there's a wait and go, you know what I mean? Like, people have
You're right.
absolutely no will whatsoever.
As
Yeah,
Like,
opposed to the Nietzschean Ubermensch of
who
1972,
waits? Yeah, who
who
sits and waits and
no,
gets a little buzzy thing.
no. That's now. Back in the day, you go up to the waiter, you go up to the host, you go,
Some of
hey,
them are
buddy,
20,
you
yeah.
slip them something nice, and you
Mr.
find your way.
Jackson.
I presume, that's the Ubermensch right there. But now, we'll take a half measure at this point of saying, no, we'll wait. We'll people watch, we'll talk shit, yeah. What if you exhibiting real will at this point with saying, no, we'll wait, and I want my drinks now, give them to me. And that's when you give me my menus while I'm
Or
waiting
just
here.
just
I want my food at the
goofing
table.
goofing with the server.
Or
Like
that.
just breaking frames. It's like, oh, I might
Yes.
remember that guy. And like that was kind of fun. That was scary for a minute because it's like, is this guy gonna waste all my time? But no,
Yes.
he respected that I'm here at work, but it was funny, He didn't. How are you? And like, if you know, tell me. There's whatever the fuck it is, right? But are there another human being or not, right? That
Sure. But my point
Mhm.
is that I think this is like an endemic issue. I think, oh, this is almost a cold take, is that there's never been a time in which human beings have been more cowed to these artificial symbolic figures,
Mhm.
and who not just sell them things and they consume their content, but they like sell you an entire identity wholesale. How
Mhm.
many fucking Trump guys have recently said, I'm getting a Tesla? Because like
Dude.
Trump got a Tesla.
Oh
How many
man.
guys at the cigar bar, Patrick, have been like, I'm thinking about getting one actually this week?
I swear I saw one. Saw one recently. It was covered in mud. It was up in Maine, actually.
there's
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot of them here. There we had one of the first dealerships in Canada, and all those people are flipping, and then the few people I know, well, yeah, you just are like, well, justify it, right? The resale value is going way down, and so it's a good buy if these people are,
Sure.
yeah. I
Yeah,
was
but
up island and they're like, oh, did you drive your Tesla? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, did anyone vandalize it? And I was like, this is, you should you want to drive a car that might get vandalized?
No, probably
That's
not.
kind of
But
fucked too.
I don't. Does that people actually do that, or is that like another psyop?
No, right, but it was that was like two 60-year-olds talking was, hey,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, did you bring your Tesla? Did you drive your Tesla up? And we're like, the last time they said that is like, how's the range? That's 100 kilometers. That's pretty good. And there's like,
It
yeah,
sucks
we
actually, and
charge
it's
here.
a
And then
gay car that you should be embarrassed for driving. Never mind any fucking political connotations.
yeah, and then the next time, this time it was like, were you worried to park it where you couldn't see it from the restaurant or whatever?
But it's Nietzsche again. It's like, oh, now I can be a victim. Now people are
Mhm.
like beset upon me for having my gay car, objectively lame car.
Crucify me.
Go so
Crucify me to
fast
my.
though, Scooter.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I driving's kind of gay in general, honestly.
No.
Train guy has spoken. Okay.
Train
Scott.
guy has spoken. No, I own a fucking Japanese car, Japanese
Uh-huh.
master race vehicle, by the way. And
Yeah.
I like listen, I'm a Honda guy. I like Hondas,
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. Actually,
but at the same time, if I could just teleport everywhere, I would. And that's all I'm saying.
brother, man. You ain't kidding.
yeah.
What would Nietzsche drive? What,
He would
what would,
teleport.
Nietzsche's sister
uh,
would drive him in whatever her husband bought her.
oh, no shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
something German. Probably a Volkswagen. Um,
It was
so,
Citroen. It was a French car.
oh, there you go.
I don't know.
Nice.
There you go. Well, so, do we, I mean, is there anything that need be said about Nietzsche? Is there anything else that's like imperative? Because if there's
Well, I
one
got a
thing
couple more quotes of mine. I got a couple
yeah,
more quotes that I pulled.
because yeah,
Here's
let's
one
hear
on
it.
consciousness that I thought was pretty interesting. Consciousness is the last and latest development of the organic, and hence also what is most unfinished and unstrong. Consciousness gives rise to countless errors that lead an animal or man to perish sooner than necessary, exceeding destiny, as Homer puts it. if the conserving association of the instincts were not so very much more powerful, and if it did not serve on the whole as a regulator, humanity would have to perish of its misjudgments and its fantasies with open eyes, of its lack of thoroughness and its credulity, in short, of its consciousness. Rather, without the former, humanity would long have disappeared. So what he's saying is humans are driven by instinct primarily, and and as such, that's why they've survived, because consciousness in his mind is not even close to where it could be someday. But the reason why I thought this was interesting is because he sort of talks about Homer there for a minute and like the classicists, the classics. But I think Patrick, do you remember we were talking about ancient Roman religion?
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about the Genius and how in that early time period in human development and the development of ideas about thought and individuation, human ego and individuation, basically in the time of the ancient Romans, Mike, they didn't have an idea of an individual yet. Like, I mean, that's cold take. Obviously, everybody knows that. Arguably, I would say that might make the case that we could thank Jesus Christ for giving us like the idea of an individual, essentially. But that's another conversation to have. Regardless, at the time, I can say this with certainty is that at the time of the ancient Romans, they did not have this concept yet. And the closest thing they had was this idea of a genius, which is a collective family spirit, like literally a semi-deity that is like your family's, a guardian angel essentially, but it's your family's guardian angel of being clever. and and this was like the very first step in the understanding of that human beings have their own sort of agency. It was like the very first chink in the chain that link in the chain, I guess, that would end up with, I think therefore I am, essentially. Um and I think that I have to think that Nietzsche knew had that in his mind when he was talking about Homer talking about exceeding destiny or whatever, you know what I mean? He
Mm-hmm.
has to he probably was drawing some equivalency between the primitive individuated mind of the Homer era
Mm-hmm.
human being
Mm-hmm.
and this sort of cultural idea of the genius. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe I'm crazy for that one. Does that make
Well,
sense?
I think so. I think so. Let me run it back. So, um, I think with what Nietzsche's what would you say prescribing is a something in the vein of again use something that is a personalized or personalized to the family unit, what the family needs, what the family aspires to, what the family identifies itself by, if that's the and so by am I and so by taking that same uh taking that same
Framework.
framework and putting that to your own self, you is that am I tracking? Is that
I guess what I'm trying to say is I just think that
please?
he is correct in saying that we're still, well, okay, I will say this. I think he thinks that we're headed somewhere. He's got some sort of like Teilhardian idea that we're headed toward this like ultimate man, which is like an
Mm-hmm.
equivalency with God or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I definitely think, by the way, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin obviously is big enjoyer of Nietzsche, right? I mean,
Yeah, of
that seems
course.
obvious.
Yeah, no. This
Um,
yeah, all of this shit seems to be
Downhill.
ironically downhill, but it's all, eyes eyes right facing upward, and expecting that we'll hit Mars by noon, if we dispense with uh, uh, the trappings of, if we don't mind excusing a few brutal acts in the name of civilization. I think that's a quote from somewhere. I remember. Um, and I think that this, going back to what you were saying, Scott, we're very prone nowadays to what we, I mean, the amount of conversations I can imagine are like dominated in real life by like
Mm.
talking about like bullshit influencer, celebrity names, things, all this shit that you stare at all day long on your phone, and then you look up at people and you're trapped, don't know what else to talk about. So
Mm.
you catch yourself speaking loudly. I think Nietzsche said something in here about you can't think in delicacies, or uh you can't something like that, if you're speaking loudly, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that nowadays people really are not, they really do just have these things that haunt their, that haunt them, and uh direct them as to what they should be doing at any given time. And the social media, mind melting complex always has an answer for whatever ennui is troubling you. So
That's something I wanted to get to too.
yeah, so
To piggyback onto
we
that,
have no God.
he's
God, we pushed God, we slammed the door on God, and all we have now is, guys with tight t-shirts selling us whatever bullshit.
yeah. Well, no, yeah, I think he did really predict something here where he talks about like now we view thinking as leisure time. You know what I mean? Like to sit and
Mm,
contemplate something, it's like, I gotta be looking at the clock because I can't, or you have to like accomplish something in that time. You know what I mean? You can't just sit and marinate in a thought. It has to be some sort of like, when you eat, he even says like when you eat breakfast, you're expected to like, have one eye on the financial news. You know what I mean? There's no time to be wasted. We need to be, and that's so fucking poignant today with the phone. It's literally could be in one palm while you're doing literally any other activity.
yeah.
And many people live that way. They do. Not to be all the wrong generation or nothing, but people do live that way. And he really nailed it with that because I mean, it's never been more like how people literally listen to podcasts at 2 times speed in order to fit all of them into the week.
Mm,
That's crazy. Like,
mm.
just maybe pick one you don't like as much and don't listen to it, brother.
Unless it's this one, in which case
Yeah,
reevaluate
no,
your values.
I expect you to be listening to this one at 1 time speed, by the way.
Honestly, yeah. When I
Although
was
there's a lot of pregnant pauses in this one, so I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
this one is a 2x, two
well,
x.
I mean, we're doing our best,
We're doing our
Shatner.
best to try to sort of
Impre-
sort through what is incomprehensible fucking garbage.
I mean, yeah, I can imagine. I, it's funny. I was reading up on Carlyle earlier this week.
Yeah, have you
Uh,
read? Sorry to interrupt you, but Mike, have you read Carlyle?
Thomas Carlyle.
Thomas Carlyle on Heroes, the Heroic, and the in Hero Worship.
Oh, uh, just snippets. He's there with the all the stories are the same story. If it's about that, is that Carlisle, or am I
No,
thinking?
he's Great Man of History.
Okay, then no,
Yeah, I
no.
think
Okay, he's great.
you're
There's
talking
something
Golden
to what
I'm
you're
Bough.
thinking
saying. All stories are
Bronwyn.
the story. Yeah, there's something to that. Um,
But he
but
was
no, it's. Oh, you're
always
thinking. Oh, sorry, you're
described
thinking
as
of
a,
the Hero with 1,000 Faces, Joseph
yes,
Diane
Campbell.
Campbell. Yeah, yeah.
Campbell.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm
his
talking about
fatal
Joseph
conceit.
Carlyle or Thomas Carlyle. And he's like the antidote to Nietzsche, by the way. I think everyone who's like a big Nietzsche head should give Carlyle a whirl and be like, wow, this is a lot more. It's as life affirming, but it also, I don't know, it's just something. It has all the same, like, a lot of the same stuff in it, but it has a lot. I just like the fucking vibe of it more. It's a lot more comprehensible. It's frankly, oh yeah. The other thing is he goes, first of all, I'm writing a book about heroes, and before I get to any of this, the greatest hero of all is Jesus Christ. That's like the beginning of the book, like literally.
Yeah.
And so he
Take
goes,
a
okay,
big
now let's
swing.
talk about Odin. And now let's talk about Odin. Right after
Right.
I said that.
Yeah.
But regardless, check that book out. It's worth listening. We've got an old episode. Me and William
Okay.
did an episode on him years and years ago, but check that out.
Yeah. He's got a
But
fantastic read. Carlyle has a fantastic read on history, and he is a renowned conversationalist, something
yeah.
I never saw Nietzsche described as.
Yeah. Yeah.
I imagine there was a lot of muttering, pregnant pauses,
Just write it
Yeah.
down, buddy. I'll read it later. Kind of
and
thing.
groaning.
Yeah.
He probably breathed through his mouth.
With that mustache, how else is he gonna breathe?
That's so true.
I got a couple more quotes I want to read here. This one's probably the most. This is the best one, I think, and it's probably the most fitting to our current zeitgeist, I guess. But 173, being profound and seeming profound. This is my. I said earlier that that poem was my favorite thing he wrote. This is also vying for the top spot. But those who know that they are profound strive for clarity. Those who would like to seem profound to the crowd strive for obscurity. For the crowd believes that if it cannot see to the bottom of something, it must be profound. It is so timid and dislikes going into the water. So why am I bringing this quote up?
That's
The
good.
reason being is because what do we do on this show? We try to get to the heart of things, and we try not to mince words about it, and we try to get to the origins, get to the real explanation, get to the real heart of the matter, and try to also put it to you in a way that I hope, again, this episode's probably our most challenging episode, possibly just because of the subject matter, of course. And I include the ones about fucking pedophilia, by the way. But what do we do on the show? We try to elucidate things for you. If you're coming away from something you're engaging with more questions than answers, consider the fact that it might be someone trying to seem profound. Is all I'm saying here. Maybe, just maybe, guys, you gotta trust me. You gotta trust me. I know better than you, and let me just tell you that it's gonna be great. You just gotta wait and just gotta put all your faith in this thing that's going on, and we'll get there, guys. You hear that, and there's no elucidation. There's no, you know what I mean? It's light on details. That's somebody trying to seem profound. That is someone who's dealing in bullshit. Am I wrong to say this?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, if you're elite, you can at least raise the question, and then if the next thing out of their mouth is like, "Oh, we're not doing criticism this time around," it's like, "Well, fuck you," right? That's
yeah.
Well, if we're talking about like we're rife with this shit now. It's
in all walks of life.
I mean, it's leached into, now it's just who, you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket to see these people. They walk amongst us, in a sense. It's gotten to a point now where
getting to a point
where people
where
really
we trust the plan. We are yours, you are Goy's, you are our cattle, and you'll die for Israel.
Whoa.
Pretty good. I forgot my point now. Shit.
Sorry.
Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah, no.
You see it, well, you're saying it's these people walk among us. It's not just in like in our fucking schizo, internet right wing bubble either, by the way. This is literally this is like literally every I mean, like, what is like the popular thing in girl culture these days? It's like astrology and like birth times and shit like that. And
Oh, yeah.
it's all got a lot of like, just trust me, guys. I gotta tapped in.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah,
which is all really infuriating when it's prescriptive.
Yeah.
But I remember a time in my own life when I'm probably trying to get laid, and I was like, well, maybe horoscopes, not prescriptively, but it lets you get into these conversations with chicks that you wouldn't otherwise get into, right? Like, can you ask the average girl if she's a total bitch? Like,
Yeah.
easily no, but if you start with her star sign, then they're like, so how do you handle conflict? And I was like, actually, you can, as a tool, it's kind of useful
that's actually
Sure.
if you're
Well, it's
being
also
really
it's
cynical
a
with it.
useful
And
tool
then
to be like, oh, this bitch is into astrology. I better not go out with her.
that's, yeah. If she knows more than you about anything, right? Like, woof.
now a lady who doesn't even know what day it is.
Hell yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
lady you
that's
can
that's
get
in
behind.
here, right? They're
She
not
lives in the
knowledge.
moment.
They're not knowledge-based creatures, right? They're
True.
really should have tracked the numbers better this time around, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's in the gay
I think you're
science
right. I think
when
that
he's
is
talking
one
about,
of them. Yeah.
yeah.
because this
But
isn't the spare not the whip book. That's his other take on ladies. That's inscrutable, but really funny if your teacher brings it up in the middle of a class of 3/4 women. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't know.
ooh,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I love those people who are like, yeah, Nietzsche was a communist, like and shit like that. He was actually like a radical anarchist communist. Then
Yeah,
it's like,
anarchist, communist, philanderer.
yeah, but then the best part is like he also the same guy is also like we should grind up the poor and make them into bread, like and
yeah,
shit like
yeah. Like
that.
this is the thing though. Like the guy is at best on his best day, he's an enigma.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
and this is what I mean by like, yeah, he does not he does not deliver at the end of the day. There's no punctuation point on what he was what he ever was really getting to. And I
yeah.
think that yeah, people they walk amongst us today. I think people now just walk around with this same kind of unresolved, like at odds, totally cognitively dissonant way of living where on one hand they'll tell you how they're trying out all the new ways to be at peace and
Mm.
this and that, but every they burn their soul out of their eyes every time they touch their hip pocket.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Which is kind of, but I can be really cynical about that feeling, but then also like 10 minutes without my phone hits harder than hours with books used to. So there's something happening, at least in my weird worldview. Because I do appreciate the time alone, or the time with my thoughts, or times I go to the chapel, or in ways that maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe it's because the world's moving faster and I'm not up to speed, or it's this other thing because maybe your awareness does develop from the things that you subject it to, and the pain of whatever it is, having a phone at your hip and people can fucking call you and they know if you read your text messages and uh that was excruciating for a long time, and now it's this cool tool most of the time and annoyance other times. So
Mm.
I was trying to relate it back to N-bomb, F-bomb, N-bomb, but didn't really hit this
Okay.
time.
Is there any other quotes you guys want to hit before we get out of here? We're past 2 hours, so I think we did our.
I got a good closer I put in but I'll read it. I was
Yeah,
just
read it. I see that it's there, but
are we ready to ice this thing? Because it's like,
yeah.
all right. Fuck off. The pen is stubborn. The pen is stubborn, sputters hell. Am I condemned to scrawl? Boldly I dip it in the well. My writing flows, and all I try succeeds, of course. The spatter of this tormented night is quite illegible. No matter. Who reads the stuff I write?
I think there was some pretty serious double entendre going on there, obviously.
Yeah.
My man horny, I think is safe to say.
Oh, dude, he had one about what my skin is cracking as the snake inside me lusts. Whoa.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Whoa,
I gotta
Bucko.
rub. I
Take it
gotta
easy
rub.
there, Bucko. Take it easy there. You're waking the dragon.
That's why I talk to the NPCs, is because the friction helps me rub my skin off.
Right.
Cool, buddy.
Oh, it's so funny.
Fun at parties. Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, talking about beating his fucking dick raw.
I hadn't even thought that this. I thought it was just a pen. I thought he was just like, who reads this shit? But now you ruined it. Thank
I
you.
read this shit. We read this shit.
Spattering. I mean, the spattering is what brought it home. I mean, also when it popped up on like the chat in the Zoom call, it like I just saw the pen is, and I'm like, oh,
whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn.
Actually,
it has to be. I mean, fuck you if you don't think that's what he was going for.
I don't know if can that be done in German?
It's crazy that
Yeah, pen is pen in fucking German.
No kidding.
The horny Nietzsche layer you guys added to just today, because he was almost asexual in my understanding of him up until today.
Oh,
dude, he talks about
he was
getting sick of pussy.
Maybe there's other. If you just think of him as like I was introduced to him as a lonesome, fucked a woman once, got syphilis, threw her down the stairs, alone, died in a chair, sexless freak.
The reason he died in a chair is because his pelvis bones were broken by fat ass bitches.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm just being honest that I'd have to do it all over with horny Nietzsche in mind.
Hornietzsche.
Hornietzsche.
All right, enough about Hornietzsche.
NHI could be his
yeah, NHI needs head immediately. Yeah.
Nietzsche.
Settle for his sister, Freddie. Yeah, for real.
I like and this I didn't want to interrupt to go back to this earlier, but you need some rust. Sharpness does not suffice, else you will seem too young and too precise. I like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, you know, what was he? Shel Silverstein? Who gives a shit at the end of the day? I know. You're not.
I have all right. Hey, I think I will say this. Read it 6 times.
Yeah, if you got
maybe
the
you'll
time.
start to get it. Read it 6 times, and maybe you'll get it. But I'm sorry I didn't just read it to you. But let me tell you, you wouldn't get it if I just read. I'm not meaning that as like a dickhead, like you wouldn't get it, man. I mean, like you wouldn't get it if I just read it to you without all the fucking pregnant pauses and other shit that we, you know what I mean?
And I was gonna get into how there's translations those are wildly different. And
Oh, I know. I wanted to cover that too, but like, there's only so much time in the day.
well, but I
just
just mean,
a
like, if you
thumbnail
want to
sketch
get
of
in the
that.
mix with the guy, just pick one, read it. Fuck, it's a
Yes.
page, and then like don't read the whole thing. Just see if there's anything pregnant in it for your
Yeah.
mind. And if there isn't, put it the fuck down. Never do not read more if you can avoid it. But yeah,
Yeah, it is pretty
good guy.
enticing though. But okay, Mike, is there anything you want to promote? It could be somebody else if you. I know you don't want to give out your real deets, but if there's anybody else you want to give shout out to, maybe.
No, just the 51st state. We're coming. Well, no, fuck, I have really no idea. No, you're doing good. You're in the Nicolas Cage.
Well, I'm glad to have you. I was very happy to have you aboard. Thank you for helping me in our DMs make sense of Fred Nietzsche.
You're lying. Yeah.
Um, no, really, I all and Patrick too. Both of you, we our DMs always bring me to a greater understanding of the subject.
Thanks, buddy.
But yeah, I think it is good to interface with other people on this kind of shit because
Yeah, we
if
might
you're just
talk more
with it
now
by
because
yourself, you'll just go nuts.
we're kind of siloing ourselves with our thoughts about it. I had no idea you read it 6 times, buddy. Wow.
Yeah, I did. Well, I listened to it 6 times. But
Okay.
Six
The
times, I
YouTube
think
one?
that's at least. No.
Joy.
I had the EPUB, and I just had an EPUB reader read it to me with computer voice.
There's a really weird Anyway, the YouTube translation's a really weird one. It's pretty cool.
No, I had the Walter Kaufman one.
Classic.
Great.
That's a good one, right? I would hope so. It's the one I read. I hope I got the
same.
proper. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, all right, enough fucking around. Die with dignity. If you want to find History Homos, RSS feed is at www.historyhomos.com. You can also find us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, BitChute, Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, and most importantly, if you like the show, go subscribe. And if you also just want to watch the show for free, normally on Substack as well, but please go over to Substack. It's historyhomospod.substack.com. Please go over there to support the show. There is 100% more show that you would access from subscribing. It is not just so this is just one episode a week. There's a full other episode that's equal in length and work that goes into it. And yeah, we got lots of great stuff planned in the future. We got lots more book analyses, movie analyses, historical topics. This week we got a history topic. Next week we got a science fiction novel. Oh yeah, that's a good thing to say. Some people like to know what books we're reading a week at least advanced. So if you're listening to this the day it comes out, this Thursday, we're putting out a bonus episode about the science fiction book Neuromancer. So you have a few days to read it. It's pretty short too, just saying. So check it out. Excellent fucking novel, and we're gonna be doing a nice long discussion on it this week. So that's the kind of stuff you can come to find on this History Homos Substack. Full real content. We don't just throw together like, what happened on tour this weekend when so bullshit. I had trouble getting through security. Yeah, it's not that. That's most podcasts, and no, we don't do that.
Geez.
So yeah, so check us out at historyhomospod.substack.com. And at time of recording, still the friendliest place in the internet, History Homos Telegram chat. That's t.me/historyhomos is the channel. t.me/historyhomos chat is the chat. You can follow us across social media at historyhomospod. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you'd like to buy a t-shirt, send me your size and address to historyhomos@gmail.com. And die with dignity. Patrick, what do you want to say? What should I say? What does Fred Nietzsche want to say as we get out of here?
I'm not ending on a Fred Nietzsche quote.
Okay, who are you quoting?
I'm quoting Gil Bailey.
Okay.
On Fred Nietzsche, because I remembered something
What's
about
What's Gilly Boy got to say?
For anyone interested in these types of topics, and for something that that we might cover in the future, Violence Unveiled by Gil Bailey. I'm gonna read a paragraph here, quick as I can. Participants in Western culture have lived for so long under the influence of the biblical ethos that it is difficult for us to fully appreciate its uniqueness. So pervasive is the concern for victims, it arouses that there is a tendency for us to think of it as either a natural, universal emotion or a personal moral achievement for which the individual can take credit. Were either of those assumptions the case, Nietzsche would have been simply wrong about Christianity. He wasn't simply wrong. He was mad. He was totally wrong, but he wasn't simply wrong. The Christian Gospels have done what Nietzsche accused Christianity of doing, though not for the reasons he alleged.
Later, homos.
Heart beats like thunder, screaming tonight, two skies asunder. God's shadow fades, leaves me unchained. I blaze alive in freedom untamed. Spinning wild, falling free. Each life returns, rebirth in me. Godless heavens, endless chance, caught forever in eternal dance. Yet flame within, circles traced on cosmic skin. Joy and pain entwined so tight, each return a leap of light. Spinning wild, falling free. Each life returns, rebirth in me. Godless heavens, endless chance, caught forever in eternal dance. Truth, wisdom grows in endless youth. Accept recurrence, faith's embrace. Each turn a mirror, my chosen face. Spinning wild, falling free. Each life returns, rebirth in me. Godless heavens, endless chance, caught forever in eternal dance. Circles traced on cosmic skin. Joy and pain entwined so tight. Each return a leap of light. Within this loop, a silent truth. Wisdom grows in endless youth. Accept recurrence, fate's embrace. Each turn a mirror, my chosen